Yesterday, we talked about the frustratingly slow pace of God. He's the prime mover, but he's not a fast mover. The story of Jesus raising Jairus' daughter demonstrates the point well. But in this episode, I want to call your attention to the pace of Jesus in yet another situation where he raises the dead, which always gives an exciting possibility with the Almighty, but yet another story in which he just doesn't move as fast as we think he should go. This story involves a close friend of Jesus named Lazarus and his sisters Mary and Martha. Again, a message is sent to Jesus that someone is sick and dying. And again, Jesus delays. This time, he doesn't delay to poll the audience for a few minutes. This time, Jesus delays for 2 days. Most surprisingly of all, the Bible says that he waits until he knows Lazarus is dead, John 11:14. If you read the conversation between Jesus and the apostles in John 11, it's the ultimate example of lost in translation. Jesus is telling them plainly that he has allowed Lazarus to die so that he can raise him to the glory of God and further their faith. They clearly have no idea what he's talking about. Why? The problem is not with the language. Their problem is with his timing. We expect God to do what we would do when alerted of an emergency. Run, rush, get hectic. They didn't understand because the pace of God's speed was as foreign to them as it is to us. You and I have less problem with what Jesus says than we do with how slowly and inconveniently he does what he does. Hey, we're in good company. He was as confusing to the apostles as he is sometimes to us. So now that Lazarus is dead, compounding the problem is now Jesus wants to make his move toward Bethany, and now there's people in Bethany who want to kill Jesus and the apostles. Had Lazarus merely been sick, the apostles would have understood if Jesus had hurried to heal him, but now that he's dead, why hurry? So now that there's death and danger on the horizon for everyone, guess what Jesus says? Let's move. So our faith is not lost in the language of the Bible. We understand the stories. Our faith is lost in the timing of our experiences. It's hard to have faith at such an awkward pace. The apostles make it clear to Jesus. For Lazarus, it's too late. For us to move now due to our enemies, it's not only too late, but it's much too dangerous. As if the conversation weren't strange enough, Jesus replies to the apostles' objection with what appears to be a riddle. Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. John 11:9 and 10. In other words, now that Lazarus is dead, and now that there are plenty of people around him that want Jesus and the apostles dead, the timing is perfect. Just when the pace of it all baffles us, it's then that God begins to move. The editorial note that John adds to his gospel is priceless. Now, when Jesus came, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles off, John 11:17 and 18. 2 miles away. Think about this, 2 miles away. Jesus could have jogged there in less than 20 minutes if the Son of God were in any kind of decent shape. But instead of a 20-minute jog, Jesus has stretched 2 miles into 4 days. At this pace, Lazarus is not just dead, he's decaying. As slow as God goes when he walks, what really blows our minds is when he stops. In both stories, the story that we shared yesterday of Jairus and the story in this episode of Lazarus, if the lack of rush or not enough, it's the stopping that seems most illogical to us. Yet despite the slowing and the stopping, both stories end remarkably the same. Jesus eventually arrives, unhurried, and raises both Jairus' daughter and his friend Lazarus from the dead. What brings both stories together in pace is not that Jesus raises both of them from the dead, but what he does and teaches along the way. Both stories result in a miracle, but both stories are purposed upon not merely raising the dead, but upon furthering faith. It's as if Jesus is signaling to us that if he answers too fast, an opportunity is lost to add stamina to our faith. In these circumstances, it's as if he knows that if he heals the sick too fast, If He answers our prayers too fast, our faith won't get as far. Jesus is frustratingly slow, but along the way, He teaches lessons we didn't request, and He does things you and I didn't ask Him to do. Those lessons are more important than the miracles themselves. Each day of the delay was a calculated choice of pace. You and I may be in a hurry to get God to do what He does, but He's simply walking. He's more intent on our listening to what He says along the way. If it takes a 2-mile over 4 days pace for those lessons to be learned, so be it. And that's God's speed. Don't fret if it seems like time's running out. When you walk with a God who can raise the dead, you're never going to be late. Our problem in prayer is that we think there's only one answer. Maybe our problem in prayer is that we think there's only one problem. Jesus could have healed Lazarus with just a command and prevented his death. He did so in other places in the Bible, but He didn't here. He could have gone the first day and raised Lazarus from the dead, but He didn't. He waited 4 days. Why? Because it wasn't just about Lazarus' death. It was about the apostles' faith. It wasn't about keeping Lazarus alive as much as it was about teaching the apostles and Lazarus' sisters that Jesus is the resurrection and the life. While you wait for your answer, walk and listen to the lessons He teaches along the way. You have something you need God to do. He has something He needs you to learn. Walk, wait, and watch. Thank you for joining me for today's episode of A Walk Through the Summer. Don't forget to share these episodes with your family and friends. You can access A Walk Through the Summer on my Facebook page or YouTube channel or your favorite podcast outlet. Please visit brianbranham.com for content that will help you think biblically. And check out my latest book release, Pulse. Men are giving up on life, marriage, work, and faith. You don't have to be next. Pulse will show you how David, a man after God's own heart, brought life back into rhythm when it got out of rhythm. Join me for the next episode of A Walk Through the Summer.